Kyrie Irving may be known as quite a weird dude nowadays because of everything he does off the basketball court. However, nothing can ever take away from the immense amount of talent that he's shown us on the court. It doesn't seem to matter which team he plays for, his absolutely ridiculous dribbling skills and shooting have put him in the conversation for the best point guard in the league at times. The former NBA champion has gotten himself into a number of fights throughout his career though, including a few nasty ones that we'll get to at the end of the video. For now though, we have compiled a few of the best fights with Kyrie Irving to show you all. Let's kick the video off with Kyrie Irving on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The team was in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Toronto Raptors, and they were leading the series 1-0 in Game 2. Irving was defending Kyle Lowry when suddenly Biyombo stepped in to hand the ball off to Lowry and set a hard screen. Irving bashed into him pretty hard, and when the whistle was blown, Kyrie started walking back down to his bench when Biyombo stuck out his elbow and held Kyrie from going anywhere. Now this sparked a pretty intense confrontation between both parties. Irving threw Biyombo's hand off of his chest, and by that time there were a ton of people running in to separate the two players. LeBron James, Lowry, and Tristan Thompson were the first three guys there, alongside a few refs who were blowing the whistle and trying to calm things down a little bit. Thankfully, the two didn't have any more physical confrontation and they were able to get calmed down on the bench and return to the normal playoff game at hand. However, in this next fight, there wasn't any calming down at first. Irving was on the Boston Celtics at this time, and they were up against the Memphis Grizzlies. Irving was able to fly past Shelvin Mack after unleashing a flurry of dribble moves against him. Mack was so unprepared for the quickness of Irving that he just reached out both arms and fouled him before Irving could hit the layup for 2 points. Mack was talking to the refs while play was stopped when Kyrie walked in between them to inbound the basketball for his Celtics. That's when Mack had a few words to say to Kyrie, which made him start trash-talking back. Because there was a referee just inches away from them, the whistle was blown pretty quickly, and they were getting separated before other teammates even knew what was going on in the first place. Kyrie was seen smiling and clapping pretty hard to try and rile up his home stadium, while Mack and the rest of the Grizzlies weren't very happy. A technical foul was dished out pretty fast, while everybody in the arena did their best to keep both Mack and Kyrie separated for the time being.
Shelvin Mack, what happened?
He said something pretty disrespectful, so I told him to do something about it. He didn't. Somebody questions your manhood at that point, then you got no choice. So it is.
The rest of that game, Irving went off. He had that chip on his shoulder mentality throughout that final quarter and was constantly getting any shot that he wanted offensively. It ended up working out nicely for Irving, who didn't even instigate this fight but was rather defending himself after being greeted with trash talk while inbounding the basketball. This next fight didn't start that same way though. As a matter of fact, it only started because of Kyrie Irving trying to defend his Cavaliers teammate. There was literally just a minute gone in the first quarter of the Cavaliers game against the Philadelphia 76ers when a player bashed into the back of LeBron James during a play, making him fall to the floor. No whistles were blown, and James slowly got back up to try and stop the Sixers from scoring on that possession. The ball was passed around a little bit longer before a shot was eventually taken, clanking off the rim and flying out of bounds. However, the same guy that knocked James down was sprinting after the basketball in an effort to save it, only to be met by Irving, who gave him a hard two-handed shove out of bounds. Irving saw it as a terrific opportunity to get his revenge for shoving his teammate to the floor. The Philadelphia player ended up crashing into the first few rows of the stands, and whistles were blown immediately on Irving for the shove. In fact, a flagrant was called on Kyrie for the play, but in his defense, he was able to stand up for his teammate. Thankfully, nobody was hurt on this play, and the game was able to continue without a serious injury.
Whether it was malicious or not, when I was in the play, I caught the tail end of it, and I kind of saw Justin, kind of lower his shoulder and knock down Bron.
He was just protecting his teammate. I think he saw LeBron went down, and I back screened, and he was turned that away that when I hit him, I back screened full speed. I haven't seen him play yet, but. And
then that kind of took me out of the play, and I was like, I hope he doesn't get the basketball again. Otherwise, I got to do something. I got to protect my brother. So.
But he was just looking out for his teammate, I think. But I told it was nothing to argue about.
Make sure to stick around until the end of the video, guys, because we've got the worst fight of Kyrie Irving's career to date. For now, though, we'll switch over to his time with the Boston Celtics. The team was playing the Denver Nuggets, and they were down by 8 points with just 9 seconds remaining in the ballgame. Jamal Murray was dribbling the clock out as the game was pretty much over when he chose to take a three-pointer with just a second left on the clock just to rub it in. Now, it's basically an unwritten rule of basketball to never take a jump shot like that when the game is already decided and everybody's just waiting around letting the clock run out. A few Celtics players had some words to say to Murray on the way out, including Irving. When the cameras cut to Kyrie, he could be seen waving his hand off at somebody like ignoring them, before taking another few steps with the game ball and launching it up into the upper levels of the stadium. Now, Murray had himself a fantastic night that game, and chances are he probably would have gotten that game ball from his head coach. And if that was in fact the game ball, Irving didn't want Murray touching that thing after that jump shot. He may have overreacted a little bit by throwing it up into the stands, but emotions were probably already pretty high because their team had just lost a close game. And emotions seem to be the true cause of a lot of these fights around the league, and that was exactly the case here. The Nets were going up against the Los Angeles Lakers when Dennis Schroeder and Kyrie Irving went at it. Irving spent half of the possession just chasing Dennis around an Andre Drummond screen before finally poking the ball away from him on the perimeter. Unfortunately, the refs whistled a foul on Kyrie for the reach-in, which made the play stop and lead to an inbound pass. As the teams were getting set up, more whistles were blown. Now, these whistles were because Schroeder and Irving started to walk at each other, yelling and arguing right on the baseline. Everybody dove in to break the two players up, but the entire time they were just yelling over everybody, getting under each other's skin. Eventually, the referee called double technicals on each of them, and play was supposed to resume. Though, right when everybody started to get back into position, Kyrie and Dennis continued to argue while walking away, and the referees jumped in to hand out ejections. Kyrie was ejected first, but while the commentators were talking about Irving's ejection, they then threw Schroeder out of the game as well. Just when you thought it was finally over, Irving started following a referee and yelling at him for getting ejected over something he didn't feel was that serious. Irving then had to get himself calmed down before angrily walking off the court and into the tunnel to the locker room. And right when he left, Dennis also had some words to say to the ref because he was confused as to why he was thrown out. I guess trash talk is enough to get yourself thrown out of a game nowadays. This next small altercation also happened to involve some trash talk. Dennis Smith Jr. knocked into Kyrie while aggressively driving towards the basket, eventually forcing a whistle to be blown on Kyrie. Smith then stepped into Kyrie and bumped him after the play was over, getting all up in his face and yelling at him despite being a rookie in the league at the time. He was actually trash-talking Kyrie so much that other Celtics players had to step in and pull him away from Irving because he just wouldn't stop. Now, I don't really know why he wanted to talk so much trash or what he was even talking about to begin with, but it was clearly enough to get Kyrie upset. Throughout the rest of the ballgame, Irving completely dominated Smith. He blocked one of his layup attempts off the backboard, then schooled him offensively the entire time. Irving even hit him with a nasty crossover during the game to silence the young rookie. This game should come as a lesson to all future rookies who have to go up against Kyrie Irving. Let your game do the talking and try not to get one of the most shifty point guards of all time all riled up. Or he might make you and your team pay like he did with Dennis Smith and the Dallas Mavericks.
I've been watching him since he was in middle school before he's doing windmills on his AU team in North Carolina.
Stay in your lane.
Who?
This is Kyrie Irving, Dennis Smith Jr.
Finally, we've come to one of the most intense fights in Kyrie's career. This one happened to be recent. He was on the Brooklyn Nets and the team was up against the New York Knicks. Kyrie drove into the lane and jumped up for either a layup or a dunk and was met in the air by a Knicks player who sent him sprawling to the ground. The ball ended up bouncing right to him when he landed on the ground, but when he was sitting there holding it after the whistle was blown, Bobby Portis walked over and was fighting Irving for the basketball for seemingly no reason at all. A jump ball may have been called in the middle of it all before Taurean Prince ran up in there and shoved Portis before getting up in his face in defense of Kyrie. Irving was able to get himself up on his feet, but that's when things just turned into a complete mess. It seemed as if every single player on the court at the time ran into the pile to get a few words out and argue with members of the other team. All the while, there were refs trying to push players apart and get things sorted out before anybody threw a punch or tried to tackle somebody. Even after both teams were getting moved out of the pile, the chatter and trash talk was still very much going on around the court. Looking back at it, there was genuinely no real reason for Portis to be itching to grab that ball out of Kyrie's hands right there. I mean, the play was essentially over, and doing that just caused chaos and anger among everybody on the floor. Can you imagine how much quicker the game would have gone if he didn't try to do that? Punishments wouldn't have had to be dished out, and the poor refs wouldn't have had to fight their way through a pile for 5 minutes before looking back at tons of footage to try and determine what started this whole ordeal. Do you want more fights? Then click on one of the videos that appear on your screen. Make sure to subscribe only if you enjoy watching NBA fights, and let us know in the comments below who you think we should make a video about next. We'll be sure to give you a shout out.